the studio lights blazed down on the polished stage of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show, where the air buzzed with anticipation. The announcer's voice boomed, introducing Hollywood icon Clint Eastwood, and the audience leapt to their feet, their applause thundering through the theater. At 94, Eastwood moved with the same deliberate grace that had defined his career, his weathered face softened by a humble nod as he settled into the guest chair. Dressed in a simple blazer over a collared shirt, he exuded quiet authority, a living legend whose presence commanded respect. Across from him, Kimmel flashed his trademark grin, leaning forward with a glint in his eye that hinted at mischief. "Clint, it's great to have you here," Kimmel said, his voice smooth but carrying a slight edge. "I've been trying to get you on this show for years." Eastwood tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Well, Jimmy, I'm here now." The crowd chuckled, settling in for what they expected to be a routine promotional interview for Eastwood's latest film, a gritty drama that had critics buzzing. For the first few minutes, the conversation flowed smoothly. Eastwood spoke with the measured wisdom of someone who'd seen Hollywood evolve over 7 decades, his answers thoughtful as he reflected on storytelling and his craft. The audience hung on his every word, captivated by the gravitas of a man who'd shaped cinema history. But beneath the surface, a subtle tension simmered. Kimmel's demeanor, usually playful, seemed to sharpen as he leaned into his questions, his interruptions growing bolder, his jokes carrying a bite that felt less like humor and more like a challenge. "So, Clint," Kimmel said, shifting in his seat, his smile tight, "you've been in Hollywood forever, feels like 100 years, right?" The audience laughed nervously, sensing the jab. "I'm curious about your take on how things have changed. All these new social awareness campaigns, diversity initiatives, must be a real shift for someone from your era." Eastwood's eyes narrowed slightly, his face betraying a flicker of irritation before returning to its stoic calm. "Well, Jimmy," he said, his voice low and steady, "good filmmaking's always been about telling compelling stories authentically. That hasn't changed. What matters is truth in the story, no matter who's telling it." Kimmel pressed on, undeterred, his tone growing sharper. "But surely all these new rules about what you can and can't say must be exhausting. I mean, back in your day, you could pretty much get away with anything, right?" The audience fell silent, the air growing heavy as the host's words hung between them. Eastwood leaned forward, his gaze locking onto Kimmel's. "I've always believed in respecting people, Jimmy. That's not new. What I find troubling isn't respect, it's the performance of virtue without the heart to back it up." The crowd murmured, a mix of agreement and unease. Kimmel's laugh came too quickly, too forced, as he tried to pivot. "Well, we're all just trying to be better, aren't we? Let's talk about your new film." "I'd like to finish my thought," Eastwood cut in, his voice calm but firm, slicing through the host's deflection. The studio went quiet, the tension now undeniable. Kimmel's smile faltered, his control slipping as Eastwood held the floor. "You invite guests here, but it seems you're only interested in what they say if it fits your narrative. That's not a conversation, Jimmy. That's using people as props." Kimmel's face flushed, his casual charm evaporating. "That's not fair," he snapped, his voice rising. "I give my guests plenty of time to express themselves." "Do you?" Eastwood asked, his tone quiet but piercing. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you're more interested in scoring points than having a real discussion. Your audience deserves better." The camera panned to the crowd, where heads nodded, some whispering to their neighbors. Kimmel glanced at them, his confidence shaken as he realized he was losing their support. "Look," he said, forcing a chuckle, "let's get back to your film. That's what people came for, not some lecture on how I do my job." Eastwood didn't blink. "I think people tune in for honesty, Jimmy. And honestly, I'm disappointed. You present yourself as a champion of values, but those values seem to vanish when they don't suit your ratings." The studio was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Kimmel's producer, standing off stage, waved frantically, signaling to wrap it up. Kimmel ignored him, his jaw tight. "We're going to take a quick break," he said, his smile brittle. "We'll be right back with more from Clint Eastwood." As the show cut to commercial, the audience buzzed with whispers. Some later reported seeing Kimmel lean toward Eastwood, his voice low and heated, though the mics didn't catch the words. When the cameras rolled again, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. Kimmel's grin was gone, replaced by a grimace. Eastwood sat composed, but there was a steel in his gaze that hadn't been there before. "Welcome back," Kimmel said tightly. "We're here with Clint Eastwood, discussing his latest film, which tackles some controversial themes." He turned to Eastwood, his eyes challenging. "You've never shied away from controversy, have you, Clint?" "I've never chased controversy for its own sake," Eastwood corrected, his voice steady. "I chase truth, even when it's uncomfortable." "Speaking of which," he continued, fixing Kimmel with a direct stare, "I've noticed something tonight. You're not really interested in what your guests have to say unless it aligns with your agenda." The audience fell silent, the band frozen, as if afraid to break the moment. Kimmel's face reddened. "That's a serious accusation," he said, his voice stripped of its usual humor. "This is just how interviews work, Clint. We keep things light, we joke around." "No," Eastwood countered, his voice carrying through the studio. "You invite people here under the pretense of promoting their work, but you're really using them to push your politics. When they don't play along, you edit their words to make them look foolish or dismiss them entirely." A woman in the front row gasped audibly. Kimmel's eyes darted toward her, then back to Eastwood. "Look," he said, lowering his voice as if to keep things private despite the cameras, "we can talk about this off-air, but we need to move on. We have a schedule." "I understand schedules," Eastwood said. "I've directed over 30 films. But I also understand integrity. Sometimes that means speaking hard truths, even when it's inconvenient." The audience erupted in applause, catching Kimmel off guard. His producer was now on the stage, whispering urgently, but Kimmel waved him away. "If you're so concerned about truth," Kimmel shot back, his voice rising, "maybe we should talk about some of your past controversial statements instead of acting like you're some moral authority." Eastwood regarded him with a look that bordered on pity. "I've never claimed to be perfect, Jimmy. I've made mistakes, and I'll make more. The difference is, I own mine. Can you say the same?" Before Kimmel could respond, Eastwood pressed on. "Let me ask you something. Do you believe in the values you claim to stand for, or is it all just part of the act? Because there's a gap between the person you present and how you act when the cameras aren't rolling." Kimmel's producer was now visibly panicked, signaling to cut the feed, but Kimmel ignored him. "I don't have to justify myself to you," he snapped, his voice tight with anger. "This is my show." "And that's the problem," Eastwood replied. "You think that gives you the right to manipulate people to serve your purposes. This industry has enough problems without hosts like you using your platform to divide instead of unite." The producer stepped in, whispering in Kimmel's ear, but the host brushed him off. "We're taking another break," Kimmel announced abruptly. "When we come back, we'll have our next guest." Eastwood didn't move. "Are you serious?" he asked, his mic still live. "This is how you handle being called out? By running away?" Kimmel leaned in, unaware his mic was hot. "You've said your piece. Now get off my stage before security escorts you out." The audience gasped, their applause faltering as Kimmel's words echoed through the studio. Had he really just threatened to have Clint Eastwood, a Hollywood titan, forcibly removed? As the show cut to commercial, the cameras kept rolling for the studio feed. Eastwood remained seated, calm as ever, while Kimmel stood, gesturing angrily toward the exit. "I've been in this business longer than you've been alive," Eastwood said evenly. "I've seen people like you come and go. The ones who mistake their platform for importance never last." Two security guards approached, their steps hesitant. One, a man in his 50s, paused, clearly starstruck, and muttered something about an autograph before his colleague pulled him back. The audience was riveted, phones out, capturing every second of the chaos. Network executives rushed onto the set, huddling with producers as they grappled with the unfolding disaster. "Mr. Eastwood," one executive said, avoiding Kimmel's gaze, "perhaps we could continue this privately." "There's nothing private about disrespect," Eastwood replied, his voice carrying. Jimmy invited me here, then tried to ambush me. Now he wants to pretend it didn't happen. That's not how men of integrity behave. The studio was pandemonium. Audience members whispered fiercely, many voicing support for Eastwood. Social media was already alight with clips of the confrontation, uploaded by quick-thinking attendees. Kimmel stood, arms crossed, surrounded by executives who spoke in hushed, urgent tones. His face was a mask of fury, his glances at Eastwood venomous. "Clint," Kimmel said, forcing a conciliatory tone, "we've clearly gotten off on the wrong foot. Let's take a breath and start over." Eastwood studied him. "I appreciate the offer, Jimmy, but we're past that. You've shown your true colors. This isn't about our disagreement, it's about the inauthenticity infecting our media. You're not alone in that, but you're part of it." "Oh, give me a break," Kimmel snapped, his composure gone. "This moral authority act is getting old. You're just another celebrity with an opinion." "You're right," Eastwood said. "I'm just a man with an opinion. The difference is, I don't pretend mine's the only one, and I don't silence those who disagree." The audience erupted, some standing to applaud. The security guards hesitated, unwilling to touch Eastwood. An executive stepped between them. "We're taking an extended break," he announced. "Please remain seated." Kimmel interjected, his voice sharp. "There's no misunderstanding. He hijacked my show for his own agenda." Eastwood rose slowly, his presence towering. "I didn't come here for a fight, Jimmy," he said. "You invited me, thinking my name would boost your ratings. But you weren't interested in a real conversation, just a viral moment." He turned to the audience. "I've been in this business a long time. The pursuit of ratings and social media buzz has corrupted honest dialogue. What happened here tonight is a symptom of a bigger problem." Kimmel shouted, "That's enough. Cut the cameras, cut his mic." But it was too late. Phones were recording, the moment uncontainable. "Security!" Kimmel called, his voice cracking. "Remove him now." The guards approached reluctantly. "Sir," one said, almost apologetically, "we need to ask you to leave." Eastwood nodded. "I understand you're doing your job." To Kimmel, he added, "Remember this, Jimmy. This is what happens when you value winning over truth." As the guards escorted him toward the exit, their demeanor was respectful, almost reverent. Audience members stood, some shouting, "Let him speak," and "Shame on you, Jimmy." Eastwood paused at the stage's edge, turning to the cameras one last time. "The measure of a person isn't how they treat those they agree with," he said, his voice steady. "It's how they respond when challenged. I think everyone here learned something about character tonight." With that, he walked off, dignity intact, leaving Kimmel alone on stage, his public image shattered. The host tried to laugh it off. "Well, that was unexpected. We'll be right back." But the audience's murmurs grew louder, some walking out in protest. Social media exploded, clips spreading like wildfire, most condemning Kimmel's behavior. In the days that followed, the confrontation became a cultural touchstone. Kimmel's viewership tanked as sponsors wavered, and networks distanced themselves. Eastwood's reputation soared, his courage celebrated by peers and fans alike. When asked about it later, he said simply, "Some things need saying, even when it's uncomfortable. I have no regrets." The clash between Clint Eastwood and Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just a moment of drama, it was a revelation of character, a stark reminder of the gap between authenticity and performance in a media world obsessed with image.